Children of helicopter parents. What was the worst or most embarrassing thing they put you through? Story 1. This thread describes my life. Up until I left for college, my bedtime was 9 p.m. every night. I wasn't allowed to be on the phone past 8:30. I couldn't go outside by myself. I couldn't have friends over after 7, and I wasn't allowed to go to a boy's house until the summer after high school. I had to show my parents my grades every semester to prove I was successful. I rode the bus until my senior year because my dad wouldn't take me to get my license until I was 17. He pretty much told me I had to attend a specific college because it was a certain distance from home. While I'm in college, he still makes me show him my grades, check in once a week with 3 different family members, and move back home every summer. Now that I'm applying for master's programs and trying to move away, every conversation ends in an argument about me leaving and starting my own life. Edit. My parents were divorced, and when my mom died, I moved in with my dad and his girlfriend at the age of 10. The first time I told him no, he tried to hit me with a belt. He's been paying for my college using the benefits I received from my mother, which I didn't even know about until a brother from my mom's side told me. When I found out about the money, my dad became enraged and cut off communication with that side of the family. Showing grades is totally normal, but not when it comes with surprise campus visits to fact-check. When my then-boyfriend took his own life and my grades dropped, my dad told me I was too stupid for college, that I was wasting his money, and that I needed to drop out. He and his girlfriend worked all the time, so I had to go to a babysitter until I was a sophomore in high school. I feel like I don't know how to make friends because my social interactions were so limited due to his rules. I never really knew how to have relationships with men growing up. I just did whatever would keep them happy and prevent them from getting upset with me. I don't know how to do a lot of basic life skills on my own, but my boyfriend is slowly teaching me, thank God. When I was a sophomore in college, I stayed the night at my then-boyfriend's house, and my dad told me I must have spent the last year in school sleeping around and that no one would want me because of it. Now, I live with my current boyfriend, and this is the longest relationship I've ever been in. He's helping me move away. I got accepted into a master's program in Canada and another in my home state. But I'm terrified to leave, so I'm choosing the in-state one. It's farther away than where I am now, so I see it as a baby step. No one in our family lives more than an hour away from each other. I'm the first to go to college and actually finish, and I will get away. Story 2. I wasn't allowed to hang out with girls when I was younger. One day, I was at the school park with some friends, and a couple of girls happened to be there too. My mom called me to ask who I was hanging out with, and I only mentioned my guy friends. Well, apparently, she had been spying on me with binoculars from home. The park was just a few blocks away. As soon as she saw the girls, she drove to the park, got out, made a huge scene in front of everyone, and forced me to go home. That probably wasn't even the most embarrassing thing she's put me through. There have been countless other situations. Story 3. Not the most embarrassing thing, but the only one I feel okay sharing. My mom would constantly go through my phone and read everything when I wasn't around. I'd only find out when she brought up embarrassing information in front of friends, family, or even a crush. Once, she found my crush on Facebook and sent him a ridiculously long message. I don't even want to know what it said. All I know is that he was super uncomfortable when he asked me if I knew she had contacted him. The worst part of it all, I never felt a sense of freedom. I always felt watched. I was never a bad kid, but I felt violated every single day and night. It was like I never even had a sense of self. Story 4. I'm still a teenager, so I'm still dealing with my parents' helicopter habits. My parents were furious when they found out I had watched The Hunger Games at a friend's house. The same thing happens anytime I watch a movie rated PG or above without them there to fast forward through the kissing scenes and mild cursing. They don't allow me to spend money without telling them first. One time, I bought a pack of gum without asking. It didn't end well. Long story short, I got my phone taken away for a week after being chewed out for a solid hour. My dad has software on my phone that tracks everything I do online, including texting and calling. He'll probably see this, but I don't care. I'd better stop typing now, they might catch me. Story 5. When I was 17, my mother once drove to my workplace after school to make sure I was actually working. When I got home, she freaked out at me, claiming I wasn't there, when in reality, she just didn't drive all the way into the parking lot to avoid being seen since she has such a distinct car. That was during her phase of thinking I was on hardcore drugs and sleeping with the entire male population of my town. I was an A-plus student who worked every day after school and on weekends. I have no idea when she thought I'd have time for all of that. Story 6. One of the more memorable experiences. When I was a freshman, my cousin was a senior, and through him, I made a lot of upperclassmen friends. At the end of the year, I got invited to prom. My parents made my date, who was just a friend, come over 2 weeks before prom and basically interrogated him with every question imaginable. They got his phone number, home number, email, everything. He was super chill about it because my cousin had warned him beforehand. When prom actually came around, I wasn't allowed to ride in the limo with everyone else. Instead, my mom drove me there in her ugly-ass Astro van that looked like the Mystery Machine, with my siblings and cousins packed inside. When we got to the venue, she got out with me and asked an administrator if she could stay. Thank God he said no. Oh, and I had a curfew, 8:30 p.m. I got there at 7. Story 7. When I went away to college, my parents would call me every single day. During my freshman year, I went on a fraternity weekend retreat where pledges weren't supposed to bring their phones. I told my parents I'd be gone for 3 days and not to call me. On the day we were coming back, the guy driving us got a call. He then hands me his phone and tells me to call my parents. Turns out, when my parents couldn't reach me for 3 days, they drove to my college and went around my dorm and half the campus asking everyone if they had seen their lost little boy. I was 18 at the time. On top of that, since I was still on their family cell phone plan, they looked up every number I had recently called or texted. Then, they proceeded to call everyone, letting them know I was lost and asking if they knew where I was. This included girls I had crushes on but barely knew, random classmates, and mild acquaintances. When I got back to my dorm, my worried parents were waiting for me, and my phone was flooded with messages from people asking if I was okay and letting me know my parents were looking for me. For the next day, every 1 in 5 people I passed on campus would ask if I had talked to my parents, because they had been looking for me. Story 8. Depriving me of internet access. In 9th grade, I was only allowed to use my laptop in the kitchen to do homework. My parents blocked Facebook, but I found websites that let me use Facebook chat anyway. In 10th grade, I was allowed to take my laptop to my room, but my dad would turn the internet on and off every other hour from 8 a.m. until midnight, at which point it shut off completely for the night. It was ridiculous because I could never sit down long enough to actually get any work done before the internet disappeared, and I had to wait for the next hour. When my dad found out about the chat sites I used to bypass the Facebook block, he blocked those too. I ended up using Bing Bar's Facebook chat function, which was slow and glitchy. By 11th and 12th grade, the internet only shut off at 1 a.m., and the parental controls were finally removed. At that point, I went crazy, binge-watching Netflix and talking to people constantly. Unsurprisingly, my grades took a hit. Story 9. I work in an ER, and I get sick and tired of helicopter parents bringing their kids in for ridiculous reasons. He got a nosebleed a week ago, and again today. She's been having foot pain after PE. You get the idea. But the worst are the parents who bring their over 18-year-old kids into the ER because they want them drug tested. I love turning to the legal adult and asking, "Do you consent to this?" That's when the parent usually turns beet red and starts yelling at me about how they are the parent, they pay the insurance, yada yada blah blah. At which point, I remind them that their precious child is, in fact, an adult, and without their child's express consent, I cannot perform any tests on them. I've seen more than my fair share of light bulbs go off over the kid's head as they flat out refuse all lab work. I just tell them, "All right, you heard them. I can't do anything." This always ends in a call to the hospital administrator, who then tells them the exact same thing. Also, I'm not allowed to give out any information over the phone, since I can't verify that the caller is the legal guardian. Nor can I discuss anything in the room without the patient's express permission. It's honestly fun to watch some parents' veins throb when they realize they can't get their way. Story 10. When I was engaged to my now husband, my parents gave me many long lectures about how I couldn't lean my head on his shoulder or ever be alone with him. According to them, doing so would lead him to have uncontrollable urges, which would inevitably result in him raping me, and it would be my fault for working him up. These lectures became daily and grew more and more absurd. I'm glad my husband was able to stick it out. Things are much better now that I live with him on the other side of the country. Edit. I'm seeing a lot of comments suggesting that my dad must have raped my mom. My parents actually have a happy marriage, so I'm sure that's not the case. However, once I was married, I started getting lectures about how men have high libidos and that I should never turn my husband down, because doing so would leave him with no choice but to stray. It was the exact same logic as before, just with a different angle of blame. While awful, I'm not sure I'd call that rape, since the woman technically consents, even if that consent is coming from years of brainwashing. Still, it's absolutely toxic and unhealthy. Also, these ideas came from both my parents. They were completely in agreement. It wasn't just my dad. Story 11. I never went to a school dance or a sports event. No prom, no nothing. I wasn't allowed to go to the mall by myself at 19 years old. If I did, my dad would follow me around, walking about 5 feet behind me the entire time. When I was 20, I told my parents I was going to get a cell phone, and it turned into a huge fight because they didn't want me to have one. I had been working since I was 15, was going to pay for it myself, everything. I wasn't allowed to lock my bedroom door or the bathroom door, even in my early 20s. Moving out was the best thing ever. One of the most embarrassing things happened when I was about 12. My mom, my little sister, who was 7 at the time, and I went to Costco to do some shopping. Out of nowhere, my dad shows up dressed as a clown. He used to dress up for birthday parties, follows me and my sister around, honking his clown horn in our ears and yelling to random guys that he was our dad. Even now, at 31, he still shows up at my work and tells my coworkers to let me know that my daddy is here to see me. I think the last time I called him daddy was when I was 7, 8. Nobody calls him that. Story 12. One night, I decided to visit my boyfriend at his apartment for some TV time and cuddles. At some point, I restarted my phone and forgot to turn it back on. While we were watching TV, I fell asleep. Around midnight, my mom tried calling me, but since my phone was off, it went straight to voicemail. Any reasonable person would assume my phone had died or didn't have service, which was pretty common where I lived. Not my mother. She immediately called the cops to report me missing. When they asked how long I had been gone, she responded, "About 8 hours." The cops told her to wait until morning. By this point, it was around 1 a.m., and I was still asleep. My mom then proceeded to wake up every single one of my friends, calling them one by one in a panic. None of them knew where I was. Eventually, she called my best friend, who told her I was at my boyfriend's apartment. At this point, my mom knew I was safe. I wasn't missing. But, of course, that wasn't enough for her. After pestering my best friend relentlessly for the exact location, she finally got the name of the apartment complex. My best friend, not knowing the exact unit, went back to bed. That didn't stop my mother. At nearly 4 a.m., I woke up to banging on the door and my mother screaming. Personably anxious, "Open the fucking door." I ran to the door, thinking something was seriously wrong. I flung it open, only to find my mother, bright red, practically steaming with rage. She yelled at me to get in my truck and go home. The next day, when I went to visit my boyfriend to profusely apologize for my mother's behavior, I found out she had banged on every single door in the complex until she found the right one. I was 18 at the time. It wasn't much longer before my relationship ended. And this is just one of many, many, many stories. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.